Most women, at some point, encounter the invisible threads of emotional control, woven so subtly into relationships that they feel like love, trust, or even destiny. Yet beneath the surface, these threads tighten, pulling at the edges of reality, distorting truth, and leaving a lingering sense of confusion. Why does affection sometimes feel like a cage? Why do certain interactions drain the spirit, leaving one questioning their own mind? This is the shadow of manipulation, a psychological dance where one partner seeks to control, not connect. Through the lens of Carl Jung's wisdom, the archetype of the truth-teller emerges, a feminine force of discernment, standing firm against the unseen games of power. This journey begins with unveiling the narcissist's subtle tactics, understanding their roots in the unconscious, and arming oneself with emotional intelligence to reclaim sovereignty. The narcissist moves like a phantom, their tactics cloaked in charm, vulnerability, or even feigned empathy. One of their most insidious tools is gaslighting, a deliberate erosion of reality. Imagine a moment where a woman's feelings are dismissed as overreacting, her memories questioned as misremembered. This is no accident. The narcissist projects their own shadow, the unacknowledged parts of themselves they refuse to face, onto their partner, making her doubt her own truth. Jung would call this ego projection, where the manipulator's inner chaos is externalized, casting their partner as the flawed one. The result? A slow unraveling of confidence where the victim begins to question her own perceptions. This is the first tactic to recognize, the subtle dismissal of your reality, a whisper that says, "You're too sensitive," or "That never happened." It's a calculated move to keep power imbalanced. But why does this work? The answer lies in the collective unconscious, a concept Jung described as the shared reservoir of human experience. Within it, patterns of control and submission echo across generations, often rooted in early attachment wounds. A woman who grew up seeking validation from inconsistent caregivers may unknowingly gravitate toward partners who mirror that dynamic, promising love but delivering control. The narcissist exploits this, sensing vulnerabilities like a predator senses weakness. Their charm feels intoxicating because it taps into an unconscious longing for approval. Yet this is not love, it's a transaction. The narcissist feeds on attention, admiration, or compliance, leaving their partner emotionally depleted. Recognizing this pattern is the first step toward breaking it. Ask yourself, does this relationship amplify your light or does it dim it? To counter this, emotional intelligence becomes a shield. The truth-teller archetype doesn't just see through deception, she feels it in her core. Emotional intelligence begins with self-awareness, the ability to name one's emotions without judgment. When a manipulator dismisses your feelings, pause. Notice the tightening in your chest, the flicker of doubt. These are signals, not weaknesses. Stoic philosophy, particularly Epictetus, teaches that while external chaos, such as a narcissist's words, cannot be controlled, your response can. Instead of reacting, observe. Write down what was said, how it felt, and what it triggered. This act of discernment pulls the narcissist's tactics into the light where they lose their power. The truth-teller doesn't argue with a gaslighter. She steps back, observes, and trusts her inner compass. Setting boundaries is the next layer of protection. Boundaries are not walls, they are sacred lines that define where you end and another begins. A narcissist will test these lines, often with subtle guilt trips or feigned victimhood. "If you loved me, you wouldn't need space," they might say, or "I'm only trying to help you." These are hooks designed to pull you back into their orbit. The truth-teller responds with clarity, "I hear you, but I need time to process." This isn't rejection, it's self-respect. Jung's concept of individuation, the journey toward wholeness, requires honoring your own needs over external demands. A boundary might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're conditioned to please others, but it's a muscle that strengthens with use. Practice saying no in small ways and watch how it shifts the dynamic. The narcissist's power thrives in silence, in the unspoken doubts they plant. But what happens when you name their tactics? When you refuse to carry their shadow? The truth teller doesn't just protect herself, she transforms the relationship. By holding firm to her truth, she forces the manipulator to confront their own reflection. Some may retreat, unable to face their unacknowledged flaws. Others may escalate, doubling down on control. This is where emotional intelligence shines. You choose whether to stay, reshape the dynamic, or walk away. The question lingers: what would it feel like to trust your TR? Of so fiercely that no one could dim your light. The narcissist's second tactic often hides in plain sight: the art of feigned vulnerability. Picture a moment where a partner shares a tearful story, casting themselves as the wounded soul in need of saving. The heart stirs, empathy flows, and suddenly, the dynamic shifts. You're no longer an equal but a caretaker, tethered to their emotional needs. This is no accident. The narcissist wields vulnerability like a blade, cutting into your compassion to secure control. Jung's shadow dynamics reveal the truth here. What appears as openness is often a projection of their unhealed wounds, designed to bind you to their narrative. The collective unconscious plays its part, too, whispering archetypal roles, savior, nurturer, that women are conditioned to embrace. Yet this is a trap, one that drains your emotional reserves while feeding their ego. Consider the woman who feels compelled to fix her partner, to soothe their pain at the cost of her own peace. This is the male unconscious at work, as Jung might describe, a dynamic where the manipulator's unintegrated anima, their inner feminine, seeks external validation through control. The narcissist doesn't want healing, they want dependence. Their stories of victimhood are carefully curated, often laced with half-truths, to keep you emotionally hooked. The Stoics, like Seneca, would urge discernment here. Focus on what lies within your control, your response, not their chaos. Step back and ask, does their vulnerability demand your sacrifice? Does it leave room for your own needs? If the answer is no, the truth teller archetype rises, recognizing this as a tactic, not a connection. Breaking free begins with emotional clarity. Emotional intelligence requires naming the dynamic without shame. When a partner's sob story feels like a leash, pause and reflect. What emotions surface? Guilt, obligation, or perhaps a flicker of resentment? These are clues, not flaws. Journaling can anchor this awareness, mapping out patterns over time. Notice how often their crises coincide with your attempts to assert independence. The narcissist's vulnerability often spikes when boundaries are set, a subtle punishment for daring to prioritize yourself. The truth teller sees through this, refusing to let empathy become enslavement. She asks, what would it mean to honor your own emotions as fiercely as you honor theirs? Boundaries become the antidote to this manipulation. A narcissist may paint boundaries as rejection, but the truth teller knows better. They are acts of self-preservation. Try this. When faced with their emotional demands, respond with calm clarity. I hear your pain, but I need space to process my own feelings. This isn't coldness, it's balance. Jung's individuation process teaches that true connection flows from wholeness, not sacrifice. A boundary might feel like a risk, fear of conflict or abandonment may surface, but it's a step toward authenticity. Practice small boundaries first. Decline a request that feels excessive, or take a day to respond to their emotional pull. Each act strengthens your inner resolve, signaling to the manipulator that their tactics no longer hold sway. The Stoic principle of detachment serves as a guide here. Epictetus reminds us that while we cannot control another's behavior, we can control our reactions. When the narcissist leans on vulnerability to manipulate, choose curiosity over compliance. Why do their needs always overshadow yours? What happens when you prioritize your own emotional health? The answers reveal the dynamic's truth. A relationship built on manipulation cannot sustain mutual respect. The truth teller doesn't just deflect this tactic. She reclaims her power by refusing to play the savior. She knows that authentic connection requires two whole selves, not one diminished to prop up another. This shift in perspective unveils a deeper truth. The narcissist's tactics only work if you remain unaware. By shining a light on their feigned vulnerability, you disrupt their script. Some manipulators may double down, escalating their emotional displays to regain control. Others may retreat, seeking easier targets. Either way, the power dynamic shifts when you refuse to carry their shadow. Emotional intelligence becomes your sword, cutting through illusion to reveal what's real. The question now burns. What would it feel like to choose relationships that honor your truth, not exploit it? The narcissist's third tactic is a chameleon's game, mirroring. In the early stages of a relationship, they reflect your desires, values, and dreams, creating an illusion of soul-deep connection. It feels like fate, a partner who seems to understand you perfectly. But this is no coincidence. The narcissist studies their target, adopting their passions and vulnerabilities to forge a bond that feels unbreakable. Jung's lens reveals this as a projection of the collective unconscious, where archetypal ideals of love and connection are exploited. The manipulator taps into universal longings, a soulmate, a mirror of the self, only to twist them into a tool for control. This mirroring fades once the hook is set, replaced by criticism or indifference, leaving you chasing a ghost of the connection you thought was real. This tactic preys on the unconscious, particularly the female psyche conditioned to seek harmony and connection. Jung might describe it as the anima's shadow at play, an idealized projection of love that masks the manipulator's true intent. The narcissist's mirroring creates a false sense of intimacy, binding you to their script. When the mask slips, the shift is jarring. The partner who once adored your quirks now critiques them. "You've changed," they might say, when in truth, they've simply stopped performing. The confusion this breeds is deliberate, designed to keep you tethered to their approval. Pause and reflect. Does this relationship feel like a mirror of your soul or a maze that keeps you lost? Emotional intelligence offers a way out. The truth-teller archetype sharpens her gaze, noticing inconsistencies in the narcissist's behavior. Emotional awareness begins with tracking your own feelings. When their praise feels too perfect or their criticism too sudden, what stirs within you? A pang of doubt, a flicker of unease. These are signals from your unconscious, urging you to question the dynamic. Journaling can crystallize this. Write down moments when their behavior shifted from adoration to control. Patterns emerge, revealing the mirroring for what it is, a tactic, not a truth. The Stoic wisdom of Epictetus applies here. You cannot control their deception, but you can control your clarity. Ask yourself, is this connection built on mutual authenticity, or am I chasing a reflection? Setting boundaries against mirroring requires courage. The narcissist thrives on your emotional investment, so the truth teller disrupts this by reclaiming her independence. Try this. When their praise feels overwhelming, respond with calm neutrality. "I appreciate that, but I'm still learning who I am." This subtle deflection signals that you're not a canvas for their projections. If their criticism stings, pause before reacting. Instead of defending yourself, say, "I hear you, but I see this differently." This isn't confrontation. It's a refusal to let their narrative define you. Jung's individuation process emphasizes integrating all parts of the self, light and shadow, rather than surrendering to another's script. Boundaries protect this journey, ensuring your sense of self remains intact. The Stoics teach that external chaos, like a narcissist's shifting persona, is beyond your control. What you can control is your inner compass. When the manipulator's mirror cracks, don't chase the illusion of who they were. Instead, turn inward. What drew you to their false reflection? Was it a longing for validation, a fear of being unseen? These questions unearth unconscious patterns, often rooted in early attachment wounds or societal conditioning. The truth teller doesn't just see through the narcissist. She sees into herself, reclaiming the parts she's given away. This self-awareness disarms the manipulator, who relies on your emotional dependence to maintain control. As the mirroring tactic unravels, the power dynamic shifts. The narcissist may push harder, doubling down on charm or pivoting to guilt to reel you back in. But the truth teller stands firm, her emotional intelligence a beacon in the fog. She knows that authentic connection doesn't require losing herself. By naming the tactic and setting boundaries, she rewrites the script, choosing relationships that reflect her truth, not someone else's illusion. The question lingers. What would it mean to love someone who sees you as you are, not as a mirror for their needs? The fourth tactic of the narcissist is isolation, a subtle but devastating maneuver to sever connections that threaten their control. It begins quietly, perhaps a passing comment about a friend who doesn't understand you, or a suggestion that family demands too much of your time. Over time, these remarks weave a web, distancing you from your support network until the narcissist becomes your sole source of validation. Jung's shadow dynamics illuminate this. The manipulator projects their own fear of exposure onto others, framing external relationships as threats to their dominance. This tactic exploits the collective unconscious, where archetypal fears of abandonment or betrayal make isolation feel like loyalty. Yet, it's a cage, designed to keep you dependent and disconnected from your own truth. Consider the woman who notices her world shrinking. Friends fade, not through conflict but through subtle nudges from her partner. "You don't need them," the narcissist might say, or "I'm all you need." This is no accident, it's a calculated erosion of your autonomy. The male unconscious, as Jung might frame it, seeks to dominate by narrowing the feminine sphere of influence. The narcissist knows that a woman connected to her community is a woman empowered, her truth-teller archetype fortified by collective strength. Isolation weakens this, leaving her vulnerable to their narrative. Ask yourself, have your relationships with others dimmed since this person entered your life? Does their presence feel like a replacement for your broader world? Emotional intelligence is the key to dismantling this tactic. The truth teller listens to her inner signals, feelings of loneliness, guilt, or unease when connections weaken. These are not random, they're warnings from the unconscious, signaling a loss of balance. To counter this, map your relationships. Write down who you've drifted from and why. Notice if the narcissist's words or actions played a role. This clarity cuts through their fog. Stoic philosophy, particularly Seneca's focus on inner calm, reminds you that while you cannot control their attempts to isolate, you can control your response. Reach out to a friend, even if it feels awkward. A single message can break the spell, reminding you of your worth beyond the manipulator's gaze. Boundaries become your shield against isolation. The narcissist may resist your efforts to reconnect, framing them as betrayal. "Why do you need anyone else?" they might ask, their tone laced with hurt. The truth teller responds with unwavering clarity. "I value my connections and they're part of who I am." This isn't defiance, it's self-ownership. Jung's concept of individuation teaches that wholeness comes from integrating all parts of the self, including your ties to others. Set a boundary by prioritizing time with friends or family, even if it's small, a coffee date, a phone call. These acts reinforce your autonomy, signaling to the narcissist that their control is not absolute. Practice this consistently and watch how it shifts the dynamic. The Stoics offer wisdom here. Focus on what lies within your power. You cannot change the narcissist's need to isolate, but you can choose to nurture your connections. Reflect on why isolation feels so effective. Does it tap into a fear of being alone, a longing to be enough for someone? These are echoes of deeper wounds, often rooted in early experiences or societal pressures to prioritize romantic bonds over all else. The truth teller doesn't just resist isolation, she reclaims her place in the world. She knows that authentic relationships, whether romantic, familial, or platonic, thrive on mutual freedom, not control. As you rebuild your connections, the narcissist's tactic begins to crumble. They may push back, escalating their efforts with guilt or charm to regain their grip. But the truth teller, armed with emotional intelligence, sees this for what it is, a desperate bid to maintain power. By choosing to stay connected, you disrupt their script, affirming that your world is vast and your worth is not defined by one person. The question now burns. What would it feel like to surround yourself with people who celebrate your strength, not diminish it? The fifth tactic of the narcissist is blame shifting, a cunning sleight of hand that turns their flaws into your burdens. When confronted with their behavior, be it a broken promise or a cutting remark, they deflect, casting you as the source of the problem. "You're too sensitive," they might say, or "you made me act this way." Suddenly, the focus shifts from their actions to your supposed failings. This is no mere defense. It's a deliberate strategy to keep you on unsteady ground. Jung's shadow dynamics reveal the mechanism. The narcissist refuses to face their own imperfections, projecting their unacknowledged shame onto you. In the collective unconscious, this echoes ancient patterns of scapegoating, where one is burdened with another's darkness to maintain their illusion of control. Picture a woman who questions her partner's dishonesty, only to find herself apologizing by the end of the conversation. This is the power of blame shifting. It rewrites reality, making you doubt your own judgment. The narcissist's ego thrives on this inversion, as it shields them from accountability while keeping you tethered to guilt. Jung might see this as the male unconscious manipulating the feminine's instinct to nurture or resolve conflict, twisting empathy into self-doubt. The manipulator counts on your willingness to introspect, using it against you. Pause and ask, when you raise a concern, do you end up feeling like the one at fault? Does their apology ever come without strings? Emotional intelligence is your anchor here. The truth-teller archetype sharpens her discernment, noticing the subtle shift when blame turns inward. Pay attention to your body. Does your stomach knot when you're accused? Does your mind race to justify their words? These are signals, not truths. To counter blame shifting, ground yourself in facts. Write down the incident as it happened, what they did, what they said, and how they redirected the focus. This act of clarity, rooted in stoic discipline, pulls their tactic into the light. Epictetus would remind you that you cannot control their refusal to take responsibility, but you can control your own truth. Ask yourself, am I carrying a burden that isn't mine? Setting boundaries against blame shifting requires unwavering resolve. When the narcissist deflects, don't engage in their spiral. Instead, calmly restate your truth. I'm addressing your actions, not mine. This isn't argument, it's a refusal to play their game. The truth teller doesn't seek their approval, she seeks her own integrity. Jung's individuation process emphasizes owning your shadow, not theirs. If you feel guilt creeping in, pause and trace its source. Is it yours or was it planted? A boundary might look like stepping away from the conversation. I'm not ready to discuss this if it means blaming me. This act of self-preservation signals that their tactics no longer hold sway. Stoic wisdom, particularly Seneca's focus on inner sovereignty, guides this process. You cannot force the narcissist to own their flaws, but you can refuse to carry them. Reflect on why blame shifting stings. Does it tap into a fear of being not enough? a wound from being unfairly judged in the past. These are the unconscious threads the narcissist pulls, often without knowing. The truth teller untangles them, recognizing that her worth is not defined by another's accusations. By naming the tactic and holding firm, she shifts the dynamic, forcing the manipulator to face their own reflection, whether they choose to or not. As blame shifting loses its grip, the narcissist may escalate, doubling down on accusations or pivoting to another tactic. But the truth teller, fortified by emotional intelligence, remains steady. She knows that authentic relationships don't thrive on guilt or deflection. They grow from mutual accountability. By refusing to absorb their blame, you reclaim your power, choosing connections that honor your truth. The question now lingers. What would it feel like to stand so firmly in your reality that no one could shift the blame onto you? The sixth tactic of the narcissist is the silent treatment, a chilling weapon that wields absence as power. It's not just silence, it's a calculated withdrawal, a void meant to punish and control. One moment the relationship feels alive, the next you're met with cold distance, unanswered messages, or a blank stare that leaves you scrambling for answers. This is no oversight. The narcissist uses silence to destabilize, forcing you to chase their approval. Jung's shadow dynamics reveal the truth. This tactic mirrors their own fear of vulnerability, projected outward to keep you in their orbit. In the collective unconscious, silence echoes primal fears of abandonment, tapping into deep-seated longings for connection that make this tactic so effective. Imagine a woman who feels the weight of her partner's silence after a disagreement. Her mind races. What did she do wrong? How can she fix it? This is the narcissist's intent, to make you question your worth, to pull you into their emotional gravity. Jung might describe this as the male unconscious exploiting the feminine's instinct for harmony, turning silence into a tool of dominance. The manipulator knows that your desire to restore connection can be weaponized, keeping you tethered to their whims. Pause and reflect. Does their silence feel like a punishment? Does it leave you doubting your own value? These are signs of their control, not your failure. Emotional intelligence becomes your shield against this tactic. The truth-teller archetype listens to the emotions stirred by silence, fear, guilt, or desperation. These are not truths but signals from your unconscious, urging you to reclaim your center. To break the spell, name the dynamic. Write down how the silence feels and what it triggers. This act of awareness, grounded in stoic clarity, dissolves the narcissist's power. Epictetus teaches that you cannot control their withdrawal, but you can control your response. Instead of chasing their attention, turn inward. Ask yourself, why does their silence hold such weight? Is it amplifying a deeper wound, perhaps a fear of being unlovable? Setting boundaries against the silent treatment requires strength. The narcissist expects you to pursue them, to fill the void with apologies or concessions. The truth teller refuses. Try this. When faced with their silence, respond with your own calm detachment. I notice you're not responding, and I'm here when you're ready to talk. This isn't capitulation. It's a boundary that prioritizes your peace. Jung's individuation process reminds you that wholeness comes from standing firm in your own truth, not bending to another's manipulation. If the silence persists, use it as an opportunity to reconnect with yourself. Read, journal, or spend time with those who value your presence. This shift signals that their absence doesn't define you. Stoic philosophy, particularly Seneca's emphasis on inner calm, guides this response. The narcissist's silence is chaos they create, but your peace is within your control. Reflect on why their withdrawal feels so heavy. Does it echo past experiences of rejection? Does it stir a need to prove your worth? These are the unconscious threads the narcissist exploits, often unknowingly. The truth teller untangles them, recognizing that her value is not contingent on another's response. By refusing to chase their silence, you disrupt their script, forcing them to confront their own tactic, whether they acknowledge it or not. As the silent treatment loses its power, the narcissist may pivot, returning with charm or feigned remorse to regain control. But the truth teller, armed with emotional intelligence, sees through the cycle. She knows that authentic connection doesn't rely on punishment or power plays. It thrives on mutual respect. By holding your ground, you reclaim your emotional sovereignty, choosing relationships that honor your voice, not silence it. The question now burns. What would it mean to surround yourself with those who speak to your soul, not manipulate it with silence? The seventh tactic of the narcissist is triangulation, a subtle but potent strategy to destabilize your sense of security. This tactic involves introducing a third party, real or fabricated, into the relationship dynamic to provoke jealousy, competition, or self-doubt. It might be a casual mention of an ex who always understood them, a flirtatious interaction framed as harmless, or even pitting you against an idealized version of yourself. The goal is clear: to keep you off balance, striving for their approval while feeling inadequate. Jung's shadow dynamics reveal this as a projection of the narcissist's own insecurities, using others as mirrors to reflect their desired image while diminishing yours. In the collective unconscious, triangulation taps into primal fears of exclusion, echoing ancient tribal instincts to belong. Picture a woman who hears her partner casually praise another, their words laced with comparison. "She's so easygoing," they might say, implying you're not. The sting is immediate, planting seeds of doubt. This is no accident. It's a deliberate move to erode your confidence, making you chase their validation. Jung might frame this as the male unconscious manipulating the feminine's desire for connection, turning it into a contest you can never win. The narcissist thrives on this power imbalance, feeding their ego while keeping you tethered to their approval. Pause and ask, does their mention of others feel like a subtle jab? Do you find yourself competing for their affection? These are signs of triangulation, not your inadequacy. Emotional intelligence is your defense against this tactic. The truth-teller archetype tunes into the emotions stirred by triangulation, jealousy, insecurity, or a quiet rage. These are not weaknesses but signals from your unconscious, urging you to reclaim your worth. To counter this, ground yourself in reality. Write down the moments when triangulation occurs, what was said, how it felt, and what it triggered. This clarity, rooted in Stoic discipline, exposes the tactic for what it is: a manipulation, not a truth. Epictetus would remind you that you cannot control their words or comparisons, but you can control your response. Ask yourself, why does their praise of others shake you? Is it tapping into a deeper fear of not being enough? Setting boundaries against triangulation requires unwavering self-respect. The narcissist expects you to compete, to prove your worth in their rigged game. The truth-teller refuses to play. Try this. When they introduce a third party to provoke you, respond with calm neutrality. "I'm not here to compete. I'm here for connection." This isn't confrontation. It's a boundary that honors your value. Jung's individuation process teaches that true wholeness comes from embracing your unique self, not chasing someone else's approval. If triangulation persists, redirect your energy to what affirms you: hobbies, friendships, or personal goals. This shift signals to the narcissist that their tactics cannot sway your sense of self. Stoic wisdom, particularly Seneca's focus on inner sovereignty, guides this response. The narcissist's triangulation is chaos they create, but your peace is within your control. Reflect on why their comparisons sting. Do they echo past experiences of being overlooked? Do they stir a need to be the best in someone's eyes? These are the unconscious threads the narcissist pulls, often without conscious intent. The truth teller untangles them, recognizing that her worth is not a competition. By refusing to engage in their game, you disrupt their script, forcing them to face their own insecurities, whether they acknowledge them or not. As triangulation falters, the narcissist may escalate, leaning harder on comparisons or pivoting to another tactic to regain control. But the truth teller, fortified by emotional intelligence, remains unshaken. She knows that authentic relationships don't thrive on competition or comparison. They grow from mutual respect and genuine connection. By holding your ground, you reclaim your power, choosing connections that celebrate your worth, not diminish it. Share the moment you finally said enough and reclaimed your power in the comments below. The woman who sees the truth chooses her peace.